analyze together China and the dilemma this country faced and continues to face between globalization and nationalism, the ancient and the modern, the old and the new. We will start with a brief presentation of China and its relationship with globalization, and we will pursue with the study of Chinese medicine as an East Asian product that was part of the Chinese tradition and which has now become global. China, officially called the People's Republic of China, is the biggest country of East Asia and the world's most populous country. Since the economic reforms in 1978, known as the Reform and Opening Up or the Opening of China, the Chinese economy became one of the most important in the world. The beginning of the 21st century symbolized how China has risen to become a major force in the international economic and security. Can China modernize by learning from the outside world without compromising its independence in an age of globalization? This question resumed the whole dilemma China was facing since the beginning of the globalization process and is still facing today. Since the 19th century till nowadays, this dilemma is inherent to the Chinese way of apprehending their own identity, nationalism, foreign politics, economy, and globalization as a whole. In the 19th century, Confucian reformers already understood that they needed to study the outside world in order to preserve Chinese essence. Since the 19th century, the problematic was to find a way to import knowledge from abroad while maintaining Chinese essence, identity, and traditions. The lesson of the past is that it is necessary for China to learn from the outside world while not becoming subordinate to any foreign power. Foreign cultural influences are perceived as a threat to Chinese national identity and independence. The other problematic is the need to open up to global economy. Deng, for example, wrote a book in which he tries to find the right balance between the integration of China into the global economy on the one hand, while suppressing ideological and cultural influences from abroad on the other. This process will permit to raise Chinese standards of living but also as providing the power to oppose international hegemonism while preserving Chinese essence and identity. These are real nationalist themes linked to the globalization. In short, global integration is necessary if China is to grow strong, but if the nation is not to be overwhelmed by foreign things, it will preserve Chinese essence. There is a kind of crisis of Chinese identity since the 19th century. That's why Deng argues that it will require not only maintaining economic growth but also building a strong national consciousness for the Chinese nation. Indeed, by strengthening Chinese national sentiment, China will be able to face this global phenomenon without losing any of its history, culture, or identity. For many, being part of the globalization is a big threat for Chinese essence. All tension between nationalism and opening to the world appears to be irresolvable. Indeed, the rise of nationalism in the global area phenomenon is observed by many sociologists. Globalization can actually lead to the resurgence and strengthening of local identities. Moreover, China have struggled with the relationship between their own culture and modernity for over 100 years, a conflict between tradition and modernity, and many questions are asked about the renewing of the ancient, how to modernize without losing our identity, how to preserve traditions in a modern world. All these stakes, issues, and dilemma can be observed in the study of a Chinese product, Chinese medicine, that became global over the years. It is one example that catalyzes all these reflections and problems about China, globalization, and nationalism. Chinese medicine is a medical system, a set of theories and practices that were developed in China over a long period of time and has subsequently spread over the rest of the world, especially over the recent decades. It spread initially over the rest of East Asia and more recently to the West. This medicine gradually established itself as a genuine medical system, including its own representation of the body and universe. Indeed, the question of preservation of the authenticity of knowledge, practices, and the continuity of the essence of Chinese medicine became a cause of concern. There is a remarkable continuity of its theoretical foundation, which has been maintained for centuries. This continuity was made possible for centuries by the transmission of knowledge via a whole range of filiations, lineage, and classical schools. However, the exceptional longevity of Chinese medicines comes down to another factor. The political and social organization and the cultural framework remained relatively stable for more than 2,000 years under the imperial regime. It was until there was a break that started in the 1920s, first a brutal political change that resulted to social disorganization from 1911 to 1949. Secondly, the challenge posed by the beginnings of the globalization that led to the mass intrusion of Western medicine weakened Chinese medicine, and Chinese medicine was too slow to adopt the technological tools that enable Western medicine to progress fast. Finally, in the 1990s, as the Chinese economies rapidly expanded. In this context, Chinese medicine became a pre-scientific knowledge or feudal society's medicine, but on the other hand, it was also seen as a precious treasure that needed to be preserved. In the end, it became clear that it could be necessary to allow and support the existence of two medical systems and to encourage them to develop closer ties. The teaching of Chinese medicine had to be institutionalized in order for it to be standardized on a national scale. Although the institutionalizing of Chinese medicine has given it an official status and a certain level of social recognition, this is one of the many efforts made to enable Chinese medicine to develop. In this way, Chinese medicine started to spread in a number of other Asian countries. This was the first step of the spread of the Chinese medicine. Moreover, the coexistence between Chinese medicine and biomedicine led to numerous tensions. It was no longer possible to ignore Western medicine, and a partial assimilation was becoming possible and even necessary. This transition required decoding work, conceptual translations, practical adaptations. That's how, step by step, the scientific discoveries and technological processes that have accompanied the recent development of Western medicine were inculcated into Chinese medicine, and vice versa. Some Chinese medicine techniques, practices, and knowledges were incorporated in the Western medicine. In a way, Chinese medicine had to be subjected to a methodology constructed by and for Western medicine in order for it to regain recognition and be accepted. Indeed, some processes in the Chinese medicine are modified to facilitate their introduction on the market in the West. These practices are adapted to European and American norms and habits. It is a standardization required by the states, and by the whole process of globalization, a global product needs to fit in each and every country. In this way, Chinese medicine had a number of points in common with contemporary Western medicine and led to the exportable aspect of Chinese medicine. This is a big step for the spread of the Chinese medicine all over the world. The identity of the medical system and the way it spread and adapt to different public health systems could constitute a real success. The Chinese medicine system is no longer practiced and recognized at an institutional level only in China and in a number of other Asian countries, but also in a number of countries geographically and culturally far from China. These therapeutic practices, still on the fringe of our societies some decades ago, have now found a central position in Western health systems. The practitioners themselves are encouraged to move as their playing field is now transnational. They travel the world to give conferences, lectures, and seminars. Chinese medical clinics are implanted in many countries of Europe and North America. They also use all the globalized and globalizing tools such as internet, medias, and even more. Besides, there is another phenomenon that can be observed, illustrated by the term glocalization, which explains a process in which there is an adaptation of global forms of knowledge to local circumstances. Indeed, new forms of therapy and new categories of patients can be observed. This is the encounter between Chinese medicine and new social worlds. The same medicine can take different expressions according to where it is practiced. There are in fact different forms of Chinese medicine, and each of these medicines should be considered in its plurality. Global processes are always local processes. They can only be understood in their context. Asian medicines have been changed by the process of internationalization and evolved with it, but are still consumed for their presumed traditional virtues. They incarnate moral values and a certain vision of the world which emanate a remarkable seductive power in Western societies. For some, this made Chinese medicine lose its identity. To conclude, the study of the Chinese medicine allowed us to observe much bigger phenomenon. First of all, by studying the case of China, we discovered how globalization forced in a way all the countries to be part of an international market and to open their economy to survive and have a chance to play a major role in the international economy and politics. This process led some countries to face a big choice between nationalism and globalization. Most of them tried to preserve both and found a certain equilibrium between the two. Secondly, we observed how a country can struggle with its own identity and history, facing the dilemma between preserving traditions and heritage, or being modern. Moreover, with the example of Chinese medicine, we observed how a local product became global and spread all over the world, but also all the changes that this process implies. Indeed, to become global, this product needs to be adapted to international norms. In this way, local products are standardized to fit to the international market and be spread all over the world. All in all, this study was a little example of all the big phenomenon that globalization implies.